Welcome to ScreenBlend. This week on ScreenBlend, we talk about some of the biggest gaming headlines and go into an in-depth discussion on James Bond. Who will play him next? What do we think of some of the movies? And then what will happen in No Time to Die? Stay tuned. Hi everyone, welcome to ScreenBlend. I'm Jack and this is my co-host, Will Cutts. Welcome to another episode. Episode 5 today. How are you feeling, Will?
Yeah, very good, mate. Very good, mate. Again, as always, a bit of a weird time, but very happy to talk about our main topic for today. And it's been a good amount of, I'd actually have to say, like good weekend and getting into everything. Now, news is still not massive at the moment, but
No.
we're pushing on, and it's an interesting topic we're going to talk about today. Something that sort of started this trend of movies sort of stopping. Was this movie, what we're going to talk about today, supposed to be out by now?
It was meant to come out April 2nd in the UK and April 6th here in Australia.
Yeah, so in a different world, in a different time, we would have already been seeing this, and we probably would have spoken about this on episode 1 or 2, if it was still. But it's a really interesting topic today, and a bit of news. But hopefully, you've been all right too, mate. Everything's good with you.
Yep. I've had a good time. Yeah, had a good weekend, and everything's perfect.
Easy. So we're going to slide straight into the news, mate. Not as much as as the first couple of episodes. News is sort of drip feeding at the moment. A lot of stuff is just slowly coming out regarding some movies. A lot of Marvel stuff, DC stuff still. But you've got a couple of games things to start us off with, Jack.
Yeah. So on the games front, we've got a Crysis remaster, which was a massive sci-fi first-person shooter in 2007. And it had sequels in 2010 and 2013 as well. But just the first one's being remade. And back in the day, this was like a huge game.
Yeah.
And it was the peaking point for if your computer could run Crysis, your computer was almost top of the line.
Okay.
Because the graphics were incredible for this game back in the day. So if this gets remade, I think a lot of, people are hoping that the graphics have, been brought up to a 2020 level on the same way they were on the 2007 original.
Oh, interesting. So for that is that again, I'm not a massive Crysis fan, and I'll say that straight away, but I'll ask the question of the people who don't know. That's what I bring to this podcast, Jack. So is this, again, 07 might have not had as much online play. Is this more story-based, or do you feel like they could remaster this and bring it to a bit of an online play, because that's sort of what everyone's doing at the moment a little bit more?
They did have online play originally. I can't speak for the first one, but I know the sequels did. So they might implement this into the original, but I think for the remake, they're just going for the graphics upgrade and maybe some gameplay elements just to keep it up with modern standards.
Interesting. You said they've released another free game also. I think Sony is a part of their stay at home.
Well, actually, this one's not part of Sony, actually. This one's Just Cause 4, which is free on the Epic Store until April 24th. Okay. So that's another kind of third-person open world game. And it's a similar, speaking of Fast and Furious, it's a very similar one. You can tie cars to ropes and cars to helicopters, and it's just a free sandbox where you can pretty much do anything. You've probably seen it before.
I have seen it, yeah. It's one of those ones that's sort of always been on my sort of third on the list to sort of get that sort of franchise and play. But then something else will just come out and then it just sort of jumps it. So each time it sort of just chills where it is on my list, sort of like on some people have like a bookshelf that they haven't touched yet, and everything sort of sits there, but the new one comes out and you just don't have time to really get onto it. So that would be interesting. And when it's free, I think in all these situations right now is if you've got it or you can get it, you might as well have it. Give it a shot, play it for a day. If you don't, you've got nothing to lose. Like we spoke on an episode previously, again, you can spend, majority of games now anyway are pretty cheap. That are on the stores, and there's always percentages off. If you find the right time, you can find a good price, but anything that's free, you might as well give it a shot, and you haven't lost anything. Maybe just time.
I can tell you Just Cause 4 would probably be a good way to spend 8-10 hours in my opinion, so maybe more. And then other news, we've got on the movie front, unlike the games, we've got a Green Hornet and Kato potential remake after the 2011 Seth Rogen film of the same name. So I'm not sure about you, but what did you think of the Green Hornet with Seth Rogen when it came out?
I haven't seen it
9 years ago.
I reckon it came out.
Okay.
So would that be 10 years now?
Yeah, I think it was 2011. So approaching 10.
Let's have a look. Yeah, it was 2011. So I can't overly remember it too well, but it was not one of my favorites of that time. And again, I'm just looking at here. It cost 120 million to make.
Where did that budget go? I do not know. Seth Rogen's salary.
Yeah, exactly. Because for me, from what I remember, that does not look like 120 million. Made at the box off 230, let's say. So in the end, it hasn't even broken even by far. So for something like this, again, it's probably better to jump to a lesser budget and play off that way and see if you can make money and go. Again, I'm not too familiar with the character on this one, so I won't make too many comments, but it is an interesting one, I'd have to say.
Yeah.
I'm not clamoring for it though. So if there's a many of other comics or movies I would rather watch before that one even comes out.
Yeah, I don't know where they would get the demand from if they were to, put in the budget. But if they did it on a significantly smaller budget and I guess replace Seth Rogen, I guess the first one relied on his kind of vulgar humor to kind of carry the film.
Yeah.
But if they choose someone a bit more original and kind of make a proper origin story, a bit like MCU, but not MCU, I think, something might come out of it. I don't know. We'll just have to see for that one.
Yeah, I think so. And that's one of those ones that I feel like I can already see and might be in development hell for a very long time. But Universal are losing rights to a number of productions and over time anyway. So this is a character they could see maybe becomes a franchise. Again, we'll have to wait and see. What's next, Mace?
Well, as you said, Comic-Con has San Diego Comic-Con in San Francisco has been officially cancelled.
Yeah.
San Diego has been officially cancelled. That's a massive bummer for all those people who are planning to go, but it's probably for the best. I think safety reasons.
I think there's the big safety reasons for all of this stuff, and we spoke about it on a previous episode regarding do you have this stuff online with say Gamescom and a couple of other conventions like that. I think we're going to get to the point soon where we're struggling to even find any news at the moment. Is there's going to be nothing to release out and put out at Comic-Con. So for a Marvel, they would have probably hoped that they'd had 2 or 3 trailers out for an Eternals right now. Obviously, Black Widow would be out, so they could be commenting on a number of things like that coming forward. But with none of that stuff being out, there's no real need to do it. Do they do stuff online? But you've seen a lot of companies aren't releasing any trailers now, anything. So you might as well keep quiet until we can start going to the cinema because there's many chats on when you can do that and when you can't.
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
And where that goes, there's no point in putting out stuff, getting chatter, and then you have to remarket it again. So as much as a trailer, I'm pretty sure a majority of these places and studios would have all their trailers ready for the next 12 months or similar to close. Yeah. But there's no point releasing it at the moment because you build hype and then nothing comes from that. But again, tomorrow Marvel could release a trailer and I look like an idiot. So that won't be
well, it would be the perfect time. We're all sitting at home, aren't we? So you never know.
So I think, but you can't do these things online, I think is more also my point because there's no real need.
No.
It would be good because you'd sit down for 2 or 3 hours. You could listen to a whole day's worth of stuff. But Comic-Con's not just about, especially San Diego's not just about Hall H. I think it is about everything else that encompasses the weekend. And
I agree.
You might as well just do a stream or a Twitch then and release all this information. So it's about all the other stuff. It's about the other halls. It's about the artists there, the independent filmmakers. That's what really pushes that on. As much as Disney and Marvel and your big studios play an important part, there's a lot more to that weekend anyway. So push it off and do it next year, and where we go from there is anyone's guess.
Yeah, and while they're not having a digital event, Comic-Con, Gamescom, however, they have been officially cancelled, but they do have a digital event in the works.
Okay.
I guess the game industry has been working very differently from the film industry over this whole time so far. So I think something like Gamescom, advertising new games coming out whenever they, being pushed back to or being released. So Gamescom on Friday just announced under certain circumstances they'll won't take place in Germany. And while they're disappointed, they're looking at a new digital event and for everyone to stay healthy and all gamers worldwide, be ready.
So I think when was Gamescom supposed to be based? So I'm looking here. So it's August anyway. So we're sitting now in April, June, July. So it's a couple of months. And obviously all these things take months and months of preparation to execute. And they're probably spending, this is probably the last time you can do it to cancel. It's an interesting one. So whether they do it online and everyone gets up and about and ready for that, or I think we'll find out in the next couple of months. But there's not going to be international travel for a fair amount of time, so I think that's fine to cancel that one. I think this year is just going to be written off for the majority of these things, and we just come back next year. So as much as Gamescom could look to push it back and back or do it online, it might just be easier for everyone to cut it off now. But
yeah, and with games, you don't really need to give a release date as you do with some films, especially the MCU. You know, you can announce something and it might be coming out 3 years, 4 years. Yeah. It doesn't really matter. Just to build the hype, that initial hype. And I think Gamescom, if they did go digital, might be a good way just to, outsource and get some excitement just for a few games coming out end of this year, next year.
Correct. Yeah, I think it's a good one as we push on. But I think where those games come and what gets announced, and they can chuck that sort of online. And anyway, if they're announcing a game coming out not that far down the line, they can always obviously push that back. So, Mace, that's the end of today's news you've got, or this week's news? Yeah, there's not much out there, guys and girls, but if you have anything, again, remember to get in contact with the show at ScreenBlend on every good platform. We are now on Apple Podcasts, what is great. Finally been approved. That's the longest process. Anyway, of all the podcasting sites to get that there, but everything, it's on all your good podcasting sites now. So please give us a follow. If you want to interact or any news that we have missed this week, please send it through and we can discuss on next week's show. From episode 4, Jack, we obviously spoke about Ezra Miller. Not much has also come out from that at the moment. That's been quiet on this front in the last week. So for me, that is an interesting one. Probably their mode of letting this just fly under the rug, slide it under there, sweep it there, has sort of worked. Whether it comes up again in a couple of months. But for DC, there's no point at the moment moving too quickly on those decisions, I would think, right now. So we push on, Jack, and today's theme we wanted to sort of discuss a little bit is regarding James Bond. Obviously,
just in case you didn't get that from the beginning. Yeah.
So now, speaking about No Time to Die for a little bit and where we expect that to go. Obviously, we're supposed to be out by now earlier in the month. Where James Bond can go next, because we know this is Daniel Craig's last Bond film. Yes. I would say there is 0 to less than 0% of a chance that he'll be back for a 6th movie. We know that.
I'm surprised he came back for a 5th. He said he wanted to slash his wrist after, doing the media.
Well, if someone's slashing your wrist with like between $20 and $50 million to come back, I would happily slash my wrist for 20 or 50. So, give me $1 million at the moment and I would happily come back and, dang, I'm working on a movie and get paid a lot of money. So we'll discuss over these couple of things. So if you're listening to us right now, podcast, you're at home, you're at work, grab a notepad, grab your notes on your phone or your laptop. We're going to discuss today where we think James Bond goes next in this movie, and then we're going to pitch our next Bond and pitch a story and how we want James Bond to go next. Because over the years since he started in the 60s, 70s, and this character through the books, he's had a lot of different incarnations, especially this last Bond compared to Pierce Brosnan's Bond. And we're also going to discuss our favourite Bond and favourite Bond movies and moments. But I think the biggest thing is to sit there, guys, and as you're listening to us, sort of think where you'd take the James Bond franchise next. And again, comment that to us on Twitter or on Instagram on our post when we put up regarding this week's podcast. We'll always ask you a question to get back in contact with us. So, Jake, do you want to kick us off? No Time to Die. Where do you think this is going, and how do you think Bond will end for this 5-movie arc?
Yeah, so No Time to Die. It's the 25th James Bond film all up and Craig's 5th film. I think it is kind of seen as an ending point. From looking at a lot of the media before coronavirus, a lot of them were saying it summarizes, all Craig's previous films into one, similar to how Spectre kind of encapsulated all the villains, saying, they were under the organization of Spectre, even though it didn't kind of work, unfortunately. I think they're going to pull similar strings here. They're relating it, Christopher Waltz is coming back as Blofeld from Spectre, and as what he said in the previous film, that he's been in charge of like Green and the Chiffre from all the other films. Poor connections because it wasn't planned originally, which it really should have been. It's very loose tie-in. And so I think they're going to kind of do a few more loose tie-ins just to kind of make this 5th Bond film tie up, to Casino Royale, Quantum Solace, Skyfall and Spectre, and just kind of have a really good endpoint for Daniel Craig's Bond, whether that's a happy ending, probably not a sad ending. It is James Bond. You know, I don't very rarely does something bad or he never dies. So if they did go to that level, I think that would be a huge risk because once again, he could just be rebranded for the next one with a new actor. But whether that happens, I think they won't. But what do you think is going to happen in No Time to Die?
I think the thing with this Bond is I could see a definitive ending to this series because we've seen a 5-film or 4-film arc now coming into this 5th one. I think whatever happens, we'll just re-up it and we'll start Bond at another point. I think we'll officially end this because I don't see the point in, with everything being connected, they wouldn't have connected it, I think, if they didn't want it to have a definite ending. Because like you said, it was a very loose and it was like last minute. It's like, okay, we're going to connect all of this together now and say it was all under the same organization. And I have to say that was probably one of the most annoying things of the 4th one. And we know...
You know why that was though, don't you?
You tell me, Jack.
The MGM didn't actually have the rights to the name Spectre from the previous James Bond films until about, I think it was 2014, 2015, just before Spectre came out. So Quantum of Solace was made as a replacement for Spectre. Oh. But then they got the rights to it just before Spectre, so then they made Spectre the actual organization rather than Quantum to be behind all the bad guys. But anyway, carry on.
No, that's good. Because I know obviously Bond has, a lot of it is down to the distribution and who wins the rights to Bond, because it is open-ended character in that respect. So where we go from there, I think, is going to be very interesting. And I think with it obviously being of these 4 movies, 1's good, 3's good, 2 and 4 aren't good. We're in line for a good one now.
Yes, we are.
But the ending, I think, will just be an ending. There's no need to get a side character to give them the name of Bond. I think that would just end up feeling very Dark Knight Rises-ish, that like at the end of the movie, someone else gets given the new 007 and everyone's like, oh my God, and we talk about it for months of, are they going to be the new Bond or is someone else? And then there's going to be fighting and all this stuff on the internet. So I would say we end this here, and I would expect more of no one wins out of a movie like this. And it's the end of this Daniel Craig Bond as we know it. So I don't know how the movie's going to play out and where Rami Malek's character comes in. I'm very happy that I stuck with her name 100%.
Do you mean Lashana Lynch?
Yes.
No?
Yeah, no,
yes.
Yeah. The one who she's no, not her.
Do you mean Les Sedor?
No, Ana de Aremas. She's the one from...
yes.
She's very good. Did you know...
Yes, my latest crush, yeah.
Yes. She's dating Ben Affleck.
I know. Lucky guy. Eh?
Ridiculous. Wonder how he gets all all the women.
No wonder he left Ghana, yeah.
Yeah, because, wow. But she's only 31, so there's a chance for us, Jack. There's a chance.
Yeah.
There's a chance.
Someday.
Ben's 47. Okay, that's not too bad. But, yeah, she's very good. Very good actress.
Yeah, she's on the rise after Knives Out and all that. Her career is slowly going up.
So, and again, I don't think someone like her, though, at this point could lead a franchise after, because she's another agent. So there's obviously a lot of those.
Well,
things.
actually, I think so she's a CI agent, and then you've got Lashana, I believe her name is. She's actually the 00 agent in the film.
Yes.
So I think that sparked a lot of rumors, as in whether she will be the next 00 taking over Daniel Craig as a new black female Bond, going into the future.
I've got a sneaking suspicion on her, though, is she'll die early. I've got a suspicion, because I think the whole point of that is, or she will be an agent with Bond in this. But when everyone came and they're like, oh my God, they've announced another 007. It is also just a name. So I do agree with that. But I think there'll be a moment in the film where that's why, like, her and Bond will work together at some point, and then she will sacrifice herself for Bond. That will create a lot of airwaves around the world. But I've got something like that. They're going to have to do something like that, I think. But it's an interesting one wherever we go from here. So that's probably my thoughts at the moment will happen. Is she won't be there by the end of the movie. That's my hot take.
Yeah. I mean, I do think, I love Rami Malek,
Yeah.
he's, come quite far now, especially since his big Queen movie. But he's playing Safin. And there's also more rumors on the flame. I'm not sure if you've heard of this rumor, that he is playing Dr. No, hence the name No Time to Die.
Yeah.
Using No in the title. He's actually playing the first very original villain from the 1962 Dr. No.
Yeah.
So it's kind of bringing the end to the beginning if they do approach it like that. But yeah.
I think in the end, I feel like that is a very typical sort of Bond thing that's been going on, though, is everything will come back. So it's like these 5 have used moments of the other movies from before to bring it into one. And that's why I think in the end you just have to, once these 5 finish, you just have to sort of start again and go from there. It's a interesting one, though, because why do we have to lie, especially in a Bond movie? I think especially the last one, because everyone knew what it was. But it's like, I'm not waiting. Like, it's not going to be like, oh my God, I'm not going to sit in the cinema and be like, oh my God, it's Dr. No. Oh my God. Like,
yeah.
So just tell us. Like, I don't need to always be lying about this. Now, maybe he's not the character. So
maybe he's not. That's fine.
And there's no, and then if you lie about it and say he is, then he isn't. People are going to go, oh my God.
But in Spectre, they said Christopher Waltz was Franz Oberhauser when he turned out to be, the biggest James Bond bad guy of Blofeld in the series. So you might pull, Star Trek as well. Khan, they said was just a normal John or
John Doe or whatever it is. So I think in the end, all this stuff is just explain to the audience and don't make them feel like an idiot sometimes and try and smash this major reveal, because if you don't reveal it that big. But I also have to say is like, obviously a lot of James Bond people know who Dr. No is, like your main fans, but still your casual audience who may have seen Dr. No, again, obviously this is a 60s film, but may have watched it in the last 10 years or picked up a James Bond movie and watched it. I don't think that many people are going to be like, oh my God, touch their friend on the side and go, oh my God, it's Dr. No, like it's Dr. No.
Yeah.
So when they try and do some big reveal and go, actually, my name is this, it's like people are just going to go, okay, cool, let's continue the story. So why'd you have to lie about his name? Unless he's like his other long lost brother or something. He's got no, like, who's Safin? Like, a nasty piece of work he's described as. It's like, okay, here we go.
It's such a generic name too, isn't it? Safin. Oh, okay.
It's going to be some acronym or something to.
Yes, it probably will be.
Move on like that. So I've got no idea what's going on. So where we go from there, I'm not sure. But I'm also interested to all these side piece characters and how they play into it and move along. But also, this movie's going to have to, like, let me just go back. So this cost $250 million. So where's the last one? So I'm just trying to find James Bond series and have a look at the other ones. Because what are you thinking this should make?
This new James Bond film, I think, as you said, they lost about $30 million rebranding it due to the coronavirus. But I think on a budget of $250 million, I think it won't make Skyfall numbers, but I think it will make similar to Spectre's numbers.
Yeah.
Because Spectre was on a very similar budget of about $245 million. It made $880 million during its run. So I feel like, Skyfall went over $1 billion. I think that was just a fantastic movie and it deserves it. But if it's on a similar level to Spectre with the hype as well coming out of that last film, I think it will go for very similar, about $900 million.
Well, I think you see the things with Bonds are, again, like any movie, like it's going to get a couple of rewatches, but a lot of it comes down to the fact that, is this good or not? And you look at the differences between Skyfall and Spectre, and straight up you see it's like, well, it's that extra reviewing that Skyfall has. So where it makes its money it's going to be interesting for me. So now, Jack, describe to me what your ideal Bond is, or your previous favorite Bond for me.
Well, my previous Bond has, I've seen them all. It's always changed and varied. I think my perfect Bond, I think everyone loves Sean Connery because he was the first one in the role. but his kind of appearance, how Ian Fleming originally described the Bond is, quite suave, black hair, very much how Sean Connery looked,
at that time.
At that time in the late 60s, mid 60s. So someone with his kind of appearance mixed with Craig's kind of gruff and brutalness that he had across his arc in the James Bond. So a combination, I think, of Craig and Sean Connery's looks and charm, I think would make a really good James Bond. I mean, my favorite over the years, I've grown up with Pierce Brosnan, and so you have as well. So I did like Pierce Brosnan as James Bond. His films were not the strongest. I think GoldenEye was great, but the other three were quite weak. I love Moore. He was kind of the funny James Bond, but I think in this modern day, he can go for a few jokes, but to his Roger Moore's level, I think it's almost a bit outdated. And then you've got Lazenby. He only was in one. He didn't really bring much, I didn't think, personally. No. And then there was Dalton, and he was good. He was quite a serious Bond, and he was in some of the more, gruesome, more serious movies in License to Kill and Living Daylights. But yeah, no, I'm hoping for a combination, a hybrid between Connery and Craig.
Yeah, I'd have to say you're pretty much spot on there. Just doing a bit of it. I think I've seen them all, but I can't really remember a lot of the other ones, and they all sort of mesh into one for me, or one or two films. You remember key moments, but for us, is obviously watching that first sort of when you watch GoldenEye, when you were say 10, 11, or 12, and you got we're going to say VHS or DVD. Let's say
VHS.
Let's say the VHS then, and you're watching GoldenEye for the first time, and you're like, wow, this is an unreal movie. Like, this is cool. It's obviously your childhood is around these characters and this sort of quirky, but I feel like Pierce Brosnan's goes from sort of like a little serious to very quirky by the end, and like really, really weird. But even just looking at the money they made, Pierce Brosnan made $16 million for Die Another Day. $16 million. Not bad at all. But I think I also forget
parasliding, paragliding over icebergs. Yeah.
So I also forget, and I think sometimes this is where this sort of time is. But Casino Royale was 2006. So again, we're talking like Mission Impossible 3 time. But Die Another Day was 2002. So it's a massive change in how that character, over 2 or 3 years, how they pushed and went in different directions. And we obviously weren't around when Daniel Craig was announced as James Bond. Like, we were obviously here, but it wasn't as much as news for us. And we had no idea who the guy was. But I think my favorite is a Daniel Craig with a spin of your where are we looking here? Like, so I think you look at it from like you said, a Sean Connery gives a different type of Bond though. And then, like a little modern day sort of Brosnan with some weird gadgets sort of thing. And then you get your Daniel Craig, what's that seriousness? But I think they all don't also mesh. So all of them have had their own types and the word, like their own themes sort of connected with them. And we've never really seen a Bond like Daniel Craig's where it is an overarching story. And I prefer from the next Bond as we get away from that. And it's like I come in and I watch a movie for 2 hours and have my own, and we'll talk about that later, my own sort of spin on things that way. So
yeah, because I think that's the way they saw Craig's James Bond movies is kind of developing from Brosnan's and the previous ones, is the fact they did have an arc.
Yeah,
he did have a proper love interest, and that this story kind of did carry across this many films. And not many people will even like Craig when he first became James Bond because he was blonde. And some of didn't like his movie, so it wasn't until Casino Royale people was like, yeah, he's pretty good actually.
Well, I think that's it now. So and where it goes and where it goes from there is next is for me is the interesting thing. So this is what I want to get into, Jack. So now is you're pitching a new James Bond to the studio because fifth one, No Time to Die, is out now. It's finished. We're both presuming that is now done. That James Bond is done. Now, do you continue with that story and arc with a different person taking over the mantle of Bond, or do you pitch a whole new story to the studio? You're trying to win the rights as maybe director or a producer of James Bond. I've got a couple of notes on where I think we should go, but hit me with yours now.
I think you find a happy balance between, you definitely do not continue the story of Craig's arc. That's that. Yeah. You throw that in the bin. But you do, I think, what the story, with the success of MCU and stuff, I think people do like those kind of lingering plot threads across films. I think Bond should have each film should go back to a very much individual plot line, and still have some lingering threads to bigger things, and maybe leading on to another movie in the future. But yeah, I think at the same time they should plan ahead. They shouldn't just go wing it like they have with these 5 films in terms of connecting them. Have a long-term plan like the MCU. Plan out the films. Get the new James Bond in a proper contract, knowing he's going to come back for 4, 5, 6 films, and very meticulously plan out a good, solid individual storyline with maybe some very side nods to future films in it, and keep it at that, because that's what we've watched for the before Craig. The last 20 Bond films was pretty much that, and keep it that with a few lingering threads.
So I'm looking at this. If I'm pitching it to a studio now,
okay, yeah,
I'm looking at the element of, again, we don't continue, we start afresh, but it can't be an origin. I want to bring back we're watching a story, and I think, and tell me if I'm wrong here, and I've enjoyed these last Bonds, but I think what makes Bonds great, and I think this is what Mission Impossible, as we spoke about in the last episode, shameless plug, that I like sometimes the aspect of what I liked about Bond was he's one man basically saving the world. Like there's a world-altering threat that's always weird. It's like someone's trying to blow up New York, or someone's trying to rob, like something ridiculous. Someone's in space or some crap. But Bond is this one man. Effectively, he doesn't have a team as much. Like the team's at the start before when he's getting ready for this mission, and he gets all his gadgets, and then he goes off, and it's Bond. It's just him.
Yeah.
Now maybe there's 1 or 2 other people helping him in certain moments. But this is about him solving this crime or mission. It's not as much of a detective. It's more of just brute force going in, trying to sort this stuff out with weird gadgets. So I'd be looking at not an origin story. And we sort of just dropped in to Bond. Yeah. And we're there. And again, whether it's a smaller villain or someone, maybe you could also just throw us sort of looking at it from a perspective too, is like Bond has his rogues gallery. Sort of similar to like a Batman and all comic book characters do. So again, you don't want to use your Joker, using the analogy of like Batman, too early, but you a sort of side villain, have a quest that Bond has to get through, and then can set up some sort of larger villains down the line and give us Easter eggs. And I'd like a through, like you said, sort of like a semi-through line. But I also want to get into a movie and not have to have watched what happened before. So I can have it's really succinct. Whereas I think this last one with Spectre was like, you could have not seen the other ones, but then the payoff when it said that they're overseeing an overarch of everything doesn't really resonate as much if you hadn't seen the other movies.
And I think that's why Casino Royale and Skyfall work so well, because while they did have that connective tissue, they were very much their own film until you kind of watch Spectre.
Yeah, and then it's like, connected. Oh, no. Yeah, and that's what I think annoys me about Spectre as much is you're sort of retconning certain moments of two very good films. Now, you could have retconned Quantum of Solace and made it feel, and then I would have been like, oh, okay, that's fair. Like, okay. But now you sort of retconned a couple of my favorite movies, but I'd be looking at an actor. Again, like you're saying, you want to lock into 5 or 6 films. So you're nearly going to have to find someone up and coming. Now, Dad and I were talking about this before. You don't want to go too young also where you're getting, say, Tyrone Egerton sort of character, and then you're turning it into a bit of Kingsman, because Kingsman's story is sort of already done. And you don't want to push too much Mission Impossible, though. So you've got to find that niche. And I'd like to see a sort of blend of realism, but with your sort of what Mission Impossible brings in and sort of like cool gadgets. But Bond having to sort this out, so you don't have those other secondary characters to help, or have someone looking in the sky as sort of like a Benji character does in Mission Impossible. This is just about Bond and his 3 or 4 different gadgets that he's got. So I'm looking someone in his early 30s, big enough name, but probably a B-list character. So we'll go into some other actors that we've had named previously that could be touted as next Bonds. But I think if you got, say, Tom Hiddleston, you're already going to have to pay $4, $5, $6, $7, $8 million. And not that Tom's not a good person, but I would say he's already... How old's Tom Hiddleston? Actually, so he's hitting 40 now, 39? 39. So he's, for me, he is probably 5, 6, 7 years too old. when you're looking at putting out, let's say your point even is 5 movies. You want 5 movies out of this guy every 3 years. You can only be having his last movie in his mid-40s. So it's got to be sort of like 50 could nearly be his max age. So that's where I'd be looking at, and sort of mixing. I want to come back to the moments where there's Bonds tied up and there's like a laser coming and all these different things, but like, I want to get
Goldfinger.
I want to get moments where I just go, God, that's so dumb, but it's Bond. Like, and so this world of what this espionage life is, we don't need the black and gritty and too over the top, but I wanted like an element of it, and it's probably a fine line to have.
So an element between Casino Royale of Grounded and Die Another Day, which is just silly laser beams coming from the sky.
And I think, but I want to see Bond. Yeah, he gets a plan, and I'm like, God, this is absolutely ridiculous. So how is he going to get out of this? And I think more just the realism comes from realistic fights and gunfights, where it's not just people going and somehow Bond doesn't get hit. But I want some good action, and there's probably too much to ask for in a way.
What are you on about?
So, but we get to pitch it, and I just think you've got to go with a sort of a younger actor. Now, obviously, a lot of people have been saying female Bonds and things, and this color of their skin does not matter, obviously, because I think the character of Bond that is written about in the books, I think he has to be a man. So that's my opinion of it. That's not like a sexist thing to say that his character, his tropes, and what makes James Bond is male. Now,
it's not like something like Ghostbusters. You can add an old female cast.
You have a character that is written. He is a male. Now, the color of skin does not matter, but I also don't want them just to pick like a black actor or an Asian actor for the sake of picking it. You want the best actor for it, but it has to be, the actor then has to portray what the studio wants, but also the character traits of a James Bond. And that's like you were saying before, black hair, tall. He is the tall, dark, and handsome. He is the suave. He comes into the room and he's the smartest. He's sort of also Bond for me is like a Bruce Wayne type. Comes in, he's 6'4", like he's big, like he looks good in a suit or a tux.
Yeah, he's Bruce Wayne with a British accent. He can fight without the suit.
And he doesn't have an alter ego. Effectively, he comes in and that's who he is. And he comes into that room and everyone sort of looks and turns, and that's what I want to see. And again, people have spoken about even Hugh Jackman type actors and stuff back in the day. He could have also played good James Bonds, but where we go next, and I think like a younger actor that can push this character into time. Now, it's also hard signing, like we'd all know, you're signing up someone for 4 or 5 films, because that first one is important, because if it doesn't stick, then you're stuffed.
Contract's gone. Yeah.
So that's where I would push for it, and I'd like to see a Q character or someone, and that's probably where you can then play with different types and stereotypes of people's Q, making him a little different, or you could have a number of Qs and what sort of M character is there, and all that sort of stuff as we push into the next type of James Bond. So thoughts on that, Jack, and where they could go?
Yeah, so really from there, I think it's, from where they should go. I've been into a little bit about that. I think we should almost go into who are some contenders for the next Bond.
Yeah.
And who you think as well might actually be a really good fit.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of Bonds have been kind of pitched across the years, especially even since Craig started in 2006. But a lot of those people who are even pitched in 2006, he's been doing this, for a very long time now. And a lot of the James Bonds have, kind of gotten a bit old now from their, original picks. And, I think Roger Moore was about, 55, 56 when he was doing his final one. So there is a bit of time if they stick to a really tight schedule of actually coming and producing these movies. Whereas Craig's, he's had one 4 years apart, one 6 years apart. There's nothing continuous. So he's actually getting quite old quite fast based on, the very long time it's taken to produce his films. So if they do plan something out and they do really stick to some really good release dates, 3 years apart, like you said, maybe 2 if they can get something fast-tracked of quality. So I think, I'm not sure about you, but I thought Michael B. Jordan is a good pick. Yes, but I think, he's up and coming, and I think he's a fantastic actor. Black Panther.
Yeah.
Not Fantastic Four, but he's still.
But I think the thing is, you're picking just a good actor, and so Michael B. Jordan fits my mold of 33. So by the first time his movie comes out, so maybe he's 1 or 2 years older, but you'd be saying he's probably 36 to 37 when a new Bond comes out. And he looks young, so he's got a young look about him. So I would also say that's a very, very good pick.
And then I think there's a few others, like everyone says Michael Fassbender as well, but
I think Fassbender's too old.
Yes, I agree. I think he's kind of moving on the age, unfortunately.
Which I think this is the thing is Fassbender, and you look at all the Bonds, is sort of like similar to when you get a new Batman or you get a new Superman, etc. Is you're signing someone who can do 4, 5, 6 movies. Now, I think Fassbender would probably jump at the chance to take a 5-picture deal. But also a lot of these actors don't want to be locked in when they're in their mid-40s to have to do all these stunts. And I think the thing that makes Bond what I want to see from a new Bond is someone that is doing their own stunts and stuff like that. So by the time he starts, he's not going to be 47.
Yeah. And that's the same with Idris Elba as well. He's well on his way now, and I think he would have made a really good one, but he's 45 now. Maybe, 10 years ago, fantastic. But 45, if the movies take 15 years with 2 years in between, he's going to be pushing 60s, and that's just not going to work.
No. So there's other names like Richard Madden is an interesting one, obviously British.
I can see that.
And 33 gives you that sort of idea of what Bond is at. So this is also an interesting one for me. Richard Madden is only 177 centimeters tall. It's like our height. I thought he was like a,
Speak for yourself.
No, I'm very generous. But, when you think of someone, you go, he's probably like 6'2", 6'3".
Yeah.
He's like 5'10".
Yeah, I could kind of see that. I watched The Bodyguard. He looked a bit shorter than some of his castmates.
But I just think you just don't expect that from him.
No.
A very good actor. Also sits that British line. So,
you know who my number one would be? Who? You can probably guess. I think people are going to judge me on this, but I really think Henry Cavill. He's perfect age. He's got the accent. He's got the build. He's got the height. I think he's more than willing to do it from what I've heard from interviews. I think he, hasn't really been, obviously none of this has been announced, but I think he's probably would make a pretty good lead.
I think he is the definition of it. That for me is what a Bond looks like. And I also think that's what they were going for with a Pierce Brosnan type in the mid-90s. And that's what they were looking for in that type of character, because I think that sort of person fits the bill. And I guess at the moment, Superman is probably not happening. So for an actor like him to tie himself to another franchise for the next 10 to 15 years would be smart.
But The Witcher apparently might actually interfere with that, because that's done very well. So that's already going into its production for second season.
So, and where we know the next production types go of anything at the moment is weird anyway. But for a British actor, I think he is the number one. Now, again, we talk about pay packets, and someone like him would be demanding 5-10 mil straight up for a movie. What again is, I'm sure, what's the difference between 200 and 210 million if you get the right actor? Yeah, or for Henry Cavill.
Craig was on 60 mil or something, 60 to 100 mil for this new one alone. So 10 mil is nothing for a new actor.
But over time, as if his 10 goes to the next film's 20, next film's 30, 40, there is a bit of money in that, but he does automatically. Whereas I'm looking at a couple of the other names here and bouncing around a couple of different articles. Now, obviously, like Nicholas Hoult is an option. Obviously, he just missed out on Batman, and I feel like he's more of a Bond-looking person. But I think, see now I'm looking at this one, is Harry Styles as Bond.
Yeah, no, maybe not. Skip that one, I reckon.
And then I think the biggest problem is a lot of these actors that they're talking about and ones who would be outstanding for it are in their 40s. And I think that's where Henry Cavill at least. But this is where you have to get someone soon. After this one's done, we're announcing, we're in production, the new Bond's going to be in 2023, 2024. and that person's out there, and you know what, guys, we're already preparing the next one for 2 years later, and the one after that for 2 years later. And where you go from there is, I think, anyone's guess, because I mean, Nicholas Hoult is probably one who. How old is Nicholas Hoult though? Because I feel like he's actually older than
I reckon he's about our age, isn't he? He's 28.
He's 30.
30. 30, sorry. Yeah.
So they may look at someone like him to play that role, because at 33, when the first one comes out, 34, he is a bit younger. And a Henry Cavill now, who would be 38. But I think Cavill's your number one pick. But again, can you build an actor up? Because does everyone then see Henry Cavill, not James Bond? Or and how does that work? But I presume Superman's not coming back as we know it. So someone like him, he's got The Witcher, but what other character does move on?
I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not sure about this, what you think, but they just go with someone unknown. I mean, a lot of the Bonds, weren't entirely well known. They had a bit of few films or television shows behind their back before they started. But if they just get someone, pluck them out and just get someone new into the role.
I think actually the one person who would be my next pick, despite him being Batman now, is Robert Pattinson.
Okay.
British also, 6'3", has that sort of look that I think the thing with Cavill is too, and maybe he can lose a little bit of weight, but he's so big. Like, you're expecting, he's going to walk into a room. He is what I expect from a Bond, but also it's like, okay, well, I know there's no henchman can beat him up. Whereas Daniel Craig, and there's moments where you go like Dave Bautista's fighting him or whatever, and you go like, how's he get out of this? Whereas like it's Bautista versus Superman. I'm like, okay, I'm sort of expecting Cavill to get out of this one. Where I think, and I sort of feel for a Nicholas Hoult, because I presume now he is going to be playing off Robert Pattinson for roles for the next 10 to 15 years, and he's already lost one of them being Batman. But again, I don't think Pattinson will be Batman and Bond. That is too hard to organise, that sort of stuff. So, but I think he's also an actor with great gravitas. I'm going to throw some words out there like that, but I think he's a
thesaurus again.
Yeah, exactly. But as an English actor, I think they have to go English though. And you're probably going to go more of your generic look. And I think that's the only thing playing against Michael B. Jordan is he is American. So, and people are very strict on that. And if people are going to be strict on, they should have to be the skin color. I think they'll also well, why aren't we picking a British black man to play the role? Where you use your female characters is fine, but I think Bond has to be like this.
Yeah, I think they're fine making British characters, with an American accent, like Tom Holland and Spider-Man or something. But getting an American to play a British character, I think actually might be a bigger deal. Yeah.
So where do you sit on Tom Holland in something like this?
To be honest, he's a little young. He's a little baby faced. I think push, because Bond's character, is always, kind of meant to be 40, 30, 40. Yeah. So I give him a decade and he might be right for the part. But for the time being, I think he just needs to, continue his film career. He's, like we said, he's doing Uncharted, which is fine because he's, younger. So he's going to be typecast into all these origin stories, if he does over the next 10 years. So I'd say maybe in the future, but I think definitely not for the time being.
I think he is. And if I can also see them. What I think he won't do, because he's already got his two franchises, hopefully being Uncharted and Spider-Man, that he'll play. He could play Peter Parker until he's 40, etc. But I can also see a studio going like, you know what, Tom Holland, big name. Let's do the young Bond. Like, let's go real young. Like, let's go him in spy school, effectively. Let's get him as just it's going to be, I've said it earlier, bloody Kingsman. It's going to be like a Kingsman.
Yeah, that's
and I can just see a studio going like, well, if we sign up Tom Holland to 9 films, let's just give him money. But like how studios work. They'll go, 9 films. He'll be 28 by the first, 27 by the first one. And he's a bankable action star. And then if it doesn't work, they go with something else. I don't think it's the right option, but I can also see a studio 100% going with something like that. And they go, okay, we're going with Tom Holland as James Bond. And I'd be like, oh, okay, here we bloody go. Like,
I don't think they should do an origin story like you said though, because Casino Royale, even at the beginning, was kind of a origin story. You know, it's
Yeah.
meant to be his first mission, how he got the ranking at those first, initial minutes.
Yeah.
No, I think, like you said, if any of these Bonds are going to come up and stand up to the role, I think they will have to just, like all the other Bonds, not have an origin story. Just be halfway through a mission at the beginning. They're halfway through the tenure as 007 agent.
Yeah.
And nothing more than that.
No, and I think that's that cold open where we just jump in and like. Again, I think actually the most perfect James Bond's movies in the last couple of years are the last couple of Mission Impossible movies. So I know it's hard for people to say, but I think that is sort of the idea of what I'm looking for from a James Bond minus all of the supporting characters and more about the main one. So where do we go to next, Mace, for the rest of the pod? I think we've nailed it. I think the big thing is everyone to send through your picks of Bond, and we'll put a couple of things up on our Instagram. And our Facebook. Also check on there, check the website. But Mace, anything else to end today with?
Well, apart from those recommendations, just throw Tom Hardy's name into the mix, but I do think he's getting a bit old. But we'll move on from there for now. And I think, I think that's all the kind of the Bond topic we want to kind of discuss today. I mean, we're happy to go into some rankings in the future. I'm more than happy to do that.
I think we'll revisit Bond when No Time to Die gets told to, when it's coming out. So I think we'll look into that a little bit more. But have you been watching anything this week, Mace, in our recommendations?
So for recommendations this week, I watched. I might give a shout out to The Witcher, seeing I mentioned it before. That was have you watched it?
No, I have not yet.
Okay, it's very, it's kind of very fantasy. Everyone comparing it to Game of Thrones, and it's similar to that. It's not quite like that. Based off the video games, it's quite good. It starts off slow. You need to watch the first 3 episodes, and then once again, the last 4 or whatnot will actually be quite good. And from the looks of it, it's what Netflix's highest watched show, so it'll be going on for a couple of years. I think it's worth getting aboard. At least just watching a season. If you like it, you like it. If you like fantasy, it's right up your alley. You'll probably love it. I really thoroughly enjoyed it. I had to get past the first a couple of episodes before I was warmed up to him as Geralt and whatnot. But no, definitely recommend. And I watched Escape Room for movies.
Oh, that's too scary for me.
See, that's the thing. It's not scary. It's just if these characters in the movie can't get out of the escape room, they die. Not really scary. It's just pretty drastic consequences if you don't think on your feet. I wouldn't probably recommend it. It's if you like a horror film and you're looking for something that doesn't involve a serial killer, and just people getting kind of slowly dying room by room, in something that we've all played of an escape room, maybe give it a watch. It's free on Stan right now, so I would maybe give it maybe 5 out of 10. But if that's up your alley, why not?
No, so I finished this morning my treadmill show that I've been using for the last week or two, Temple, what I spoke about on, I think, episode 2 or 3. So interesting. Again, we've spoken about previously some of the better shows that are actually lying around on, for us Australians, 7, 9, 10 and SBS and even ABC's on-demand platforms. So there's some good shows on there. So I finished that. The only thing that disappointed me was, again, the typical it felt like a typical ending to a show that wasn't moving that way, and they didn't know the concept is very good, but they didn't know how to end the season. And I think that was, you could sort of tell where it was going, and it was a bit of a pain in the ass in that respect. So I did really enjoy it, but I think it's nothing to say don't watch it, because I think it's also a very easable binge watch of a show. But I probably was just more disappointed with the last, how movie shows work, the last 5 minutes of the season.
Has it been renewed for a season 2?
Let me have a look. Temple.
If it has,
television.
Like I said, I did see it advertised everywhere. So it must have a pretty big budget.
It's very new. So episodes released at the end of 2019 when it was. It doesn't look like on February 30th it was announced that a series will premiere on the US. No, so nothing's been announced regarding season 2 just yet. Premiered in the UK and premiered this year in the United States. Not a lot of information on it, actually. So it's an interesting watch. Again, where we push on from there. Also, I started watching, and I think one thing that I want to go in with you, a little bit of a look into, is Dad and I started watching yesterday one of the Avengers cartoons. I think it's Avengers Assemble. So looks like it's from 2013. It was released, ended in 2019 on Disney Plus. So I think we're going to do a bit of a deep dive into Disney at some point. There's a lot of stuff on there, but it looks like that show's got around 115, 120 episodes over 5 seasons.
Oh, wow.
So I feel like that's just going to be a background watch and just watch it from there, like a pretty easy thing to watch. Surprisingly, a lot of known or like probably B, C list actors voicing the cast. So that was also when you're listening to it, I'm like, God, that voice sounds familiar.
Like
and then
John DiMaggio.
You check the wiki and I'm like, oh my God, I know that guy. He's this guy in this other show. So it was that's an interesting watch, and I enjoyed 1 or 2 episodes of that last night, and I reckon it's just the sort of perfect sort of background show. Also, if anyone wants a sort of Avengers fix at the moment when there's no Marvel MCU stuff coming out, Disney Plus has a lot of good stuff like that. So I need to watch a couple of other movies this week. I'd also recommend to anyone last year, especially in Australia, this year's Oscar winner Parasite is now on Stan. So I've had a couple of people.
I made my parents watch it last night.
Oh, what did they think?
They thought it was worth a watch. I think a lot of, I don't know. I mean, I enjoyed it. I mean, It's one of those things that looks like a normal film, and then, it gets that halfway point and something you would have never expected happens. Yeah. But I think, and that's kind of what, they were a bit unsure of, but I think overall they enjoyed it.
Yeah. I think it's one of those hard ones because some people take these movies and just look at it from face value and there's nothing wrong with that. Or then some people watch a movie like Parasite, and I think I'm a bit in between both. And they go like, oh my God, there's so much symbolism and so much, they watch it from like an extra perspective. Yeah. I think I enjoyed it the second time I watched it though, because I understood a lot more about it and the nuances that make the movie so good. And I think there's a fair few
because it's different. I think that's why,
And I think there's a couple of movies, and this is probably another topic for another time. It's like movies that get better on their second viewing and you have more of an understanding of it, because I found with Parasite, the first time I watched it, I was like very stressed because I didn't know what was going to, not that I want to know what's happening, but I was waiting for moments. And I think like Get Out, Jordan Peele's first movie, was very similar. When you watch it the second time, a lot of it makes sense. And you go like, oh, no shit. Yeah. And then you sort of appreciate the filmmaking on a higher level, because you go, how have they been thinking about that the whole time to get that to that point? So that for me is what I found interesting. But I think that's the end of the pod today, Mace.
It is. Yeah. I think that's everything. We hope you enjoyed. All the Bond chat.
So I think as always, Jack, again, everyone can get in touch with us at ScreenBlend.net to check out any latest information also regarding the pod and some movie news, TV and games. With what's going on, they can check out you at Jack_Mason22. Is that correct?
Thank you. Well, I won't stuff it up this time, but yes, that is correct. Well done.
Got it. Me will be Cutts on every social media platform, and check us out again. As I always say to everyone in this time, is listen to the podcast, but also stay safe. Support as many people as you possibly can, and support your families in these moments. Wash your hands, and just look after yourself and stay sane. And get in contact with us regarding anything. So tell us who you think your favourite Bond is, where Bond should go next, maybe just a couple of dot points. Check out our Instagram page, and wherever, give us a follow, give us a rating. Now we're on Apple Podcasts. So it's pretty easy. 5
Overcast.
Yeah, an Overcast. 5 stars. 5 stars I think is pretty good. Doesn't hurt you.
Yeah.
10 to 15 seconds out of your day. You're listening to us. Chuck us a 5 and just give us a comment, and then we'll read out the best comments or the only comments. I presume or 0, but I think what, Nan will write a comment, etc. So we'll go from there. But Mace, pleasure as always. What are we looking at touching on next week, so everyone can get sort of a little bit up to date and maybe also watch some of the movies? What are we touching on next week?
So Fast and Furious will be our next big look at, a big feature, and all of them are on Netflix as well for people to kind of watch them between now and the next podcast, so you can kind of keep a good understanding of what we'll be talking about.
Perfect. I think there's a lot of things like this. Bond is where Fast and the Furious goes next, and what planet it goes to. So again, everyone, thank you very much for listening to today's episode, and we'll be back with you soon. Ta-da.
All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.